why wouldn't she bring criminal charges if she had evidence of criminal behavior of Donald Trump? Do it on a state level and then say there are also federal charges here I believe could be brought as well, and I forwarded all that information to the federal government. My answer would be, Buck, because she doesn't actually have the goods that there are criminal violations here. I just want to dive right into it because there's going to be all sorts of craziness going around about this story today. In the last hour or so, New York's Attorney General has announced that she is bringing civil fraud lawsuits against Trump, members of his family, the Trump Organization. This is going to receive a lot of attention. The timing on it is not an accident. Democrats are going to try to make the midterms a referendum on Donald Trump and abortion. That is the entire race so far as they are concerned. They don't want to talk about Joe Biden's record. They don't want to talk about any of the decisions they've made over the past couple of years. It feels incredibly calculated, given that we already had the Department of Justice FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. But what I want to say that is significant here, it's a $250 million, I believe, civil fraud lawsuit, is that it is civil. This is ultimately just a business dispute. It is 100% political, but is a desperate ploy to put Donald Trump on the ballot in the midterms. I voted for Trump. Buck voted for Trump. A lot of you voted for Trump. I don't want people to get distracted as we sit here 48 days from the official midterm election, as all of the polls are breaking in Republican directions in every major race all over the country, because inflation, the border, and crime are the top three issues pretty much everywhere. Buck, you said it. You still think the Department of Justice may bring charges against Trump even before the midterm election. But at least for this, a lot of people are dumb. Certainly in the media, they're not going to focus on it. As soon as I saw that this was civil and not criminal, meaning it's a monetary dispute, not some major threat to someone's freedom, I just immediately say this is 1,000,000,000% political, designed to put Trump on the ballot in the midterms. But Letitia James is making a calculated decision to use her office for political attacks, and that's frankly what this is about today.
How many lawsuits, criminal allegations, different charges of all kinds can they bring against Donald Trump that are entirely frivolous, absurd, untrue, before everyone just understands what's going on here, right? And I think we're actually at that point, Clay. I think the Democrats largely know that this is all just get him. You know, it's Lavrenti Beria from the old Soviet secret police. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime, right? It's the usage of the apparatus as a weapon against your political opponents. You know, they're also talking now about the media is giving coverage to E. Jean Carroll, I believe is her name, who brought the initial allegation or brought an allegation against.
Is that the sexual assault thing?
Sexual assault against Trump. She doesn't, and I'm being serious, she doesn't remember what year it was, but she's pretty sure that it happened. She's not totally sure where or how, but she's pretty sure. She went on CNN, if you recall, and it's actually quite a moment with Anderson Cooper to bring this allegation while Trump was still president, and they effectively abandoned the whole thing because of what she said during that interview, which I'm not even going to say here on the show because to quote it is so, you know, I don't want anyone to cut the quote out and say that I've said because what she said was completely insane on that show.
You don't feel like a victim.
I was not thrown on the ground and ravished. Which the word rape carries so many sexual connotations. This was not sexual. It hurt.
But I think most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Mm. Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
Mm. We're going to take a quick break. If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to.
But they never stop, Clay. I mean, the libs will do anything to go after Trump and destroy him. And here's my thought process on this. Because people would rightly say, well, Buck, you've been a little skeptical of them bringing charges against Trump, and then you've been less skeptical. Yes, because I believe this is all being calibrated to exactly what you started talking about, exactly what you're starting out with analytically, which is this is about the midterm election, clearly, obviously, and they're trying to make it about Trump. But to your point about it being a civil lawsuit, yeah, this isn't going to be enough. This is grandstanding. This is shifting the focus. Will they, as we get closer to the election, are they willing to bring a criminal charge of any kind from the DOJ against Donald Trump? He's not running. I have to remind everybody about this, right? We think of him as, oh, well, he's going to be a presidential candidate. Right now, he is just a former president. He is a citizen. He is subject to all the usual. There's not even a guidance at the DOJ that would prevent him officially from being charged in this election cycle. I would think right now, Clay, curious what you think on this. I would think right now they still don't want to do that because that's the nuclear option, right? That's once you've indicted Trump criminally, now we know, okay, it's all hands on deck. They don't care what the system does. They don't care what this does to the country. But as we're getting closer to your point about where the polls are breaking, they're desperate. These people are lunatics. And if they think that the best option is to indict Trump right before the election, I think they're willing to do it.
I think that it would. I think they will not do it right before the election. I can respect the argument because I do think they're crazy and delusional and convinced that Donald Trump is Hitler. And if you were truly in your mind convinced that Donald Trump is Hitler, well, why would you rely on any precedents at all? You're staring into the face of pure evil.
Make the case to me and to everyone, obviously millions of people listening across the country, why won't they do it? Because I think this is an interesting exercise. So I don't think they will do it because, one, I think it's actually bad politics. That's the only thing I would think would stop them,
but leaving aside the legality, which I'll get to in a moment, but one, it's bad politics because I think if they charged Trump directly before the midterm elections, it's impossible to argue that it's anything other than a political prosecution. Even for people out there who may hate Trump, the argument that you have to file charges, now we're 48 days before the midterm election, there's nothing that is such an exigent danger that they would have to bring charges now as opposed to on November 10th or November 12th, a few days after the election. Like, there's no reason that it has to happen. So that's one. And I think it would blow up in their faces. And I think we would see a lot of people say, this is an actual direct attack on democracy. And I think it would motivate Republican and Republican-leaning independent voters to turn out in great numbers. So I think it's bad politics. Two, if you really want Trump, if you really want to nail him to nail him to the proverbial cross and hold him up so everybody can see it, if you are Merrick Garland, you need to make this non-political. I understand the point, Buck, that it is intensely political, but he has to be able to go out in front of the media and say, no one is above the law. This is about justice in America. It's not about Donald Trump. And I think they need to do that early in 23 or so now right we're back,
and you think midterms. That Hunter Biden becomes the way you still think that'll. But I mean, I think you're going to lose our bet, but you may be right about this one.
I think Hunter Biden is the sacrificial lamb. Look, Buck, I'm pretty good at understanding BS lawyer arguments. You go to law school, there's so many people who walk around and they're like, oh, I really love the law. It's such a majestic thing. And then you're like, yeah, then why are you taking a job so that you sit in your office and look at docs all day long? You like money, all right? You like power. That is why you are going to law school. But this move, Merrick Garland is the quintessential love the law guy. And that Hunter gives him cover to charge Trump.
The other issue, though, becomes Letitia James obviously doesn't care how this looks. In fact, she likes how it looks. I'm just this is a little bit of devil's advocacy because I have been very skeptical that they were going to bring a criminal charge against Trump at any point, just because the one thing that the reason that I think it's so hard, it's not even as much the lawyerly legal aspect of this as the what will the political ramifications be, right? It's like a political declaration of war. What happens? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. If they throw this punch, I think they don't really know what comes next in terms of the political ramifications of it. But what I'm thinking is, I mean, Letitia James, this could not be more obviously political, right? They're bringing some $250 million fraud suit. It's a 280-page. Clay, they're doing it a month from the election, effectively, 6 weeks from the election. So clearly they didn't care enough as the Attorney General in the state of New York. Merrick Garland did this and set this up in the summer before an election. I mean, you can already argue that it was intended to interfere at some level with the election. And so I think what they're watching here is how does this actually play in the if you're right that their belief is that a prosecution of Trump would mobilize and would, because there are a lot of people, Clay, who are just like, I can't, they throw their hands up in the air, like, I can't handle this Trump stuff again. I hear, don't you talk to people that have that?
Yeah,
I can't deal with it.
I get all that, and we can have a big discussion about that, and I think we should today. Let me just say this. The political calculus is different for someone like Letitia James or the DA who is down in Atlanta conducting state-level investigations, right? In terms of their New York State AG, she's going to be able to be elected AG for the rest of her career because
I think she wants to be AG, just to be clear.
And that may well be true. But for her individually, the politics are very beneficial. For the prosecutor down in Atlanta, the politics may well be very productive. What I'm talking about is the federal lawsuit being brought by the Attorney General of the United States, the Department of Justice.
So why do you think Merrick Garland couldn't? Again, I don't pretend that I can predict the future here, although they're not going to prosecute Hunter Biden. But why do you think the Merrick Garland argument wouldn't be the following? Donald Trump is not above the law. He's a former president. He is a citizen. These documents, this whole issue started to come to the fore this year. We're not going to delay it just because he is not running for office. He has not announced his candidacy. In fact, you could argue, again, I'm just playing it all out here, that waiting to indict him after he's announced he's running for president is clear election interference. Yeah. To indict him before he announces, Merrick Garland could make the case, not that I don't even think he really cares. I think we give these people too much credit for their honor and everything else. But a side note, he'd say, look, this is the normal pace of a prosecution of someone who is now a private citizen who had classified information and was, what's the word I'm looking, what was he doing? Obstructing justice. Obstructing justice. I'm thinking that it's possible because, Clay, this AG thing today is completely insane, all right? I mean, we just need to take a step back.
Yeah, we'll play some audio for you because we got it added down. This just, had the press conference. But I believe that when you are this guy wanted to be on the Supreme Court. And when you are on that level, you consider yourself to be a steward of precedent and the law. I'm just telling you how he thinks. And the only way that I can see that he can convince himself that this is not political in nature is if he also charges Hunter Biden and says no one is above the law.
But to your point about how he wanted to be on the Supreme Court, why isn't he on the Supreme Court?
I get it. You could argue that he's been radicalized.
Trump. I think he is a scorned man. I think he is deeply, internally, forever bitter. And the individual that he blames most directly is the person who is now in the DOJ's sights.
Yeah, I get it. I understand the argument. I do not, and to your point, we need to have a longer conversation on this. This is why, to me, the moment Mar-a-Lago got raided, if you remember, like the first few days we discussed it, I said if I were advising Trump, I can see an argument that he should go ahead and announce that he's running for president. Because if he announces he's running for president, then if he's charged with a crime,
it's clear
then
interference.
He can argue, hey, this is political in nature, and they're trying to come after me because they don't want me to be the next president of the United States, which is why I think we may have a rush for both Trump to announce right after the midterms and also for there to be potential charges brought right after.
I also just want to throw this out there, too. If they don't charge Trump, and let's just say this lingers on, we get into, and he announces, he is going to pound that drum on. They came after me in Mar-a-Lago, and it was all a sham. by the way, which it was, but put that aside, it was all a fraud. It was all political, and it's going to look very obvious to people that it was. So anyway, there's some fascinating calculations here, but we also promise for this audience, we will stay focused in on, what was our mantra yesterday, Clay? Immigration, crime, the economy. Immigration, crime, the economy.
Inflation. All of those things should be the focus. But I do want you all out there listening to have talking points, because there is going to be a frenzy. And the most important thing, my first thought when I saw this story break, is it civil or criminal? When I saw it was civil, and again, that means it's a monetary dispute in this case, not a criminal dispute, I immediately said, this is a nothing burger. It's going to get a lot of attention, but it's really just a dispute over money that will drag on for years and probably not have any serious ramifications.
As part of demonstrating illegality under that section of Law 6312, we show that they violated several state criminal laws, including falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, and engaging in a conspiracy to commit each of these state law violations. We believe the conduct alleged in this action also violates federal criminal law, including issuing false statements to financial institutions and bank fraud. And we are referring those criminal violations that we've uncovered to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Service.
That's the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, saying, Clay, she's using all those terms you never want to hear if you're a possible defendant: fraud, conspiracy, criminal referral. Now, maybe it's all grandstanding, but I don't think the referral part is. I think she's at least going to push it to the Southern District. And she's saying this is a civil case, to your point, but she's saying there were crimes unearthed here, too.
Yeah, if there were, though, why didn't she bring criminal charges?
Ah, yes, indeed. Well, she couldn't bring the federal ones, obviously. She couldn't
bring the federal ones, but I'm talking about for state violations of law. Why not bring those herself as opposed to filing a civil lawsuit? Buck, if she had, you know that she hates Donald Trump more than anything. You know that she has said that essentially she's going to get Trump. Politically, she benefits. This could help her potentially take over one day after Kathy Hochul. Remember, she wanted to run. I think she even officially announced she was running for governor, and then they couldn't raise enough money, so she decided not to run. So if she really had the goods on criminal violations by Donald Trump, why would she only charge him with civil violations? Again, state law, not federal law, because she is a state prosecutor. She doesn't get to make the decision on federal criminal violations. But if she really had the goods, certainly there is a state law that Trump could be charged under of a criminal statute nature. Instead, she only charges him with civil violations, monetary penalties, essentially, she is seeking. And then makes a big show of saying, I'm giving the rest of this evidence to others. She is politically ambitious. She wants to be governor one day. She may want to be the Attorney General of the United States. Why wouldn't she bring criminal charges if she had evidence of criminal behavior of Donald Trump? Do it on a state level, and then say there are also federal charges here I believe could be brought as well, and I forwarded all that information to the federal government. My answer would be, Buck, because she doesn't actually have the goods, that there are criminal violations here.
Well, she also doesn't want to lose. And to lose in a civil situation, the standard of proof is very different.
Correct.
Very, very different than what it would be.
For people who don't know, civil lawsuit, preponderance of the evidence, that is 50% plus a feather. For criminal, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. But I would argue, even if she lost a criminal proceeding, Buck, she's still the person who had the stones to bring criminal charges against Trump. But that's why she's. So
I think more than anything else, she's hoping to hand it off to the feds and to Merrick Garland specifically, or the Southern District of New York. Look, it depends. There are so many right now, or rather this week, I should say, but in the last 24 hours, there were Trump lawyers in federal court in Brooklyn dealing with the special master situation, the 11,000 seized documents. The process is the punishment. Everyone sees this. They are mobilizing every aspect of the legal apparatus that they can. The libs are doing whatever they can to try to bring just legal entanglements. And here's part of the problem is that this just also creates, this sends a message, I think, to people who might want to get involved in the next Trump campaign and possible administration.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
This is, the libs, even if they don't criminally charge Trump, the message they have sent here is we will hound you and your family. Remember, Trump's kids are involved in this too. We will hound you and your family for the rest of your days. The libs will bring frivolous lawsuits. They will bring the most bogus charges, whatever they can do to just punish you and ruin your life for no actual wrongdoing they could speak of. So that sends a message. Russia collusion, emoluments clause stuff, the 2 impeachments, now the Mar-a-Lago documents, now the civil case from the AG. I mean, Clay, this is the thing. We're trying to get in the heads of crazy people here. They're nuts. They can't see what's going on. They never actually get him, but they keep bringing more and more criminal charges, more court cases, I should say, against him. I think at some point they've boxed. This is why I keep thinking the desperation move becomes, if they don't charge him, they actually help him become president. I think that's where the mentality switch is happening.
Well, I think they've guaranteed that he's going to run. The way to make Trump not run was to be like, oh, you know what? He was a pretty good president, but, you know, we're going to do presidents now. We don't really have to talk about him.
And I thought Biden won with the most votes ever, and it was such a clean election, and it was perfect.
Yeah, right.
And yet they seem terrified of doing the redo here with the second round. I do think that's kind of interesting. Like, shouldn't they be... The libs should be rolling out the red carpet for Donald Trump to run again. If he's such a
bad candidate, they should want to run against him. Here's the other thing I would say, Buck. I do think Republicans out there, on some level, are going to have to make a decision in 23 as we run up towards the primary season to get ready for 24. And I think that decision is going to be, and I think there's a lot of you out there rationally kind of sitting around thinking about it, is, hey, as great as Trump was, and as great as he is, he's got one term that he can serve, right? Trump wins in 2024. He's got to be gone by 28. That's a reality. Are there other candidates that Republican primary voters might consider? And the reason why I bring this up is some of those guys could serve 8 years. And so I guess my biggest thought in terms of Democrat calculation here is the Republican bench of potential, real, legitimate, big-time contenders is way deeper to me than the Democrat bench is, right, Buck?
But does it even matter, Clay? Gavin. Does it even matter when Joe Biden was? You know what I'm saying? Like we're running against a machine.
I get Joe Biden and the machine, but I would argue that there are some candidates out there that could be better candidates and even presidents than Trump. Like, right, Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, and I'm just naming names, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Carrie
are you saying you think they could be, or that the voters may decide that they would be?
The voters may decide that they could be. I mean, to me, the thing is Democrats are trying to knock out Trump, but the reality is Republican voters are going to get to make that decision, right? So the question that I think in the political calculus is out here is, if they do bring charges against Trump, I mean criminal charges, not civil charges. Civil charges, this is all just a sideshow, whatever. You and I can get sued. Hopefully
let's not give anyone any ideas, Clay.
Yeah, but you can sue someone for anything at any point in time in this country. So the idea that you have a civil lawsuit pending against you is, and then this is the former lawyer in me speaking, or former full-time lawyer in me speaking, it's just not that big of a deal. So civil lawsuits to me are not significant. If there are criminal charges brought sometime against Trump, then the political calculus becomes far more interesting to me in terms of what primary voters would say as to whether that makes them more or less likely to want to support Trump. And I don't claim to know the answer.
But you still very strongly believe in your Trump and Hunter Biden. Trump gets prosecuted and Hunter Biden gets prosecuted. The second part of this, well, we have a bet on it. But the first part of this, You're
now with me on the Trump gets prosecuted side?
I'm feeling like, well, I just keep going through the iterations in my head. And then there's also the frustration of the fact that they benefit from this no matter what. It's a little bit like you're going through an IRS audit. You know who loses? You. You know who doesn't really care one way or the other? The government. The guys that are auditing you get paid. They either get their money or they look like they're busy, and it doesn't matter. The fact that we're even here having to go through the possible iterations of a prosecution of the likeliest next, not the only one, but likeliest next Republican presidential contender just goes to show you that they're forcing us a little bit onto defense. I mean, it is also just an interesting intellectual exercise to think about how crazy these libs are, but we're not talking about the border, inflation, crime. We're not talking about, I mean, when I say we're not, we will in a moment, and we're going to talk about 75 basis points that they're expected to raise just later today.
At 2 o'clock Eastern, we're expected to see a 75-point basis rise.
I mean, I think anybody, honestly, Clay, it was almost like invoking the mercy rule. I remember I used to play wiffle ball, right? And there'd be the mercy rule because
we play wiffle ball a lot.
You only need like one kid who's really good at wiffle ball, and all of a sudden the score gets into double digits, and all the other kids are like, he hits too hard. And watching Biden up there at the UN, and the UN apparently only exists so world leaders can whine about conflicts that the UN was unable to prevent. Like, this is what the UN does. What is the purpose of this thing? But Biden's up there, he's doing his shouty, kind of grimacing, squinty-eyed thing. And then they cut to Letitia James, with Trump announcing the civil suit. I think it was the mercy rule because Biden up there, the whole thing, I was just like, what is this old man shouting about? Like, what is this even supposed to be at this point?